All right, welcome to Duck It, our first episode where we welcomed Mostafa Kandil, the CEO and founder of SWVL, the world's fastest unicorn in the Middle East, where we spoke about a bunch of stuff. We spoke about where he came from, who he is, what motivated him, what made him the man he is today. We spoke about what it was to build SWVL, the challenges, the opportunities. We spoke about the challenges of our circumstances and what brands should actually be doing, what we can do to inspire people around us and take care of our people, both internally and the people that we serve, communities and people who ride with them. And then we spoke about the future of the company, what's going to happen, how big our appetite should be as Arabs, as Middle Eastern brands. Should we be eyeing just the region? Should we go to Africa? Should we go to Latin America? Should we take over the world? A bit of everything. Stay tuned. It's amazing. Don't forget to watch the whole show and don't forget to subscribe after you watch it. Thank you. I know you to some extent, but I'd love to spend 10, 15 minutes finding out a bit more about your story, your journey, you personally, before we get to SWVL, before we get to our kind of professional relationship and journey. I feel like I don't know the details about where you came from, where you went to school, where you grew up, who your parents are, kind of all that, fluffy kind of upbringing stuff. I feel like I know nothing about you. I'd love for you to tell us about that.
So, man, first of all, I want to thank you guys. I didn't know I'm the first actually podcast. This is very humbling and I'm quite honored. You and I now actually, we know each other for 4.5 years, actually. I don't know if you counted, but now we go way back, I can say that. And you are not a friend, you're more of a brother and an advisor and a mentor. Always been and a great friend, but more of a brother than a friend, actually. And quite honored to be hosted by you, of course. And can thank you for that. I don't feel we've done enough yet to get the honor and the privilege. I think we're just scratching the surface and learning from you guys and learning from everyone around. So thank you so much. So me, Mostafa Kandil, I'm the co-founder of SWVL. A bit about myself. I'm 27-year-old. I grew up in a city called Ismailia, which is an hour and a half away from Cairo. Worked there, was born and raised there because my family, my dad used to work there. At the age of 12, my dad passed away. He was someone who's such a role model for me, someone who's like, it's been very influential. He's shaped my life, and this was actually a very sad but great experience. Actually, it has been life-shaping for me since then. Luckily, my mother kind of instilled in me that like being this very competitive, very kind of aggressive, kind of never restless kind of a person.
Yeah.
And I'm indebted to her honestly for doing that. I grew up in Ismailia. At the age of 16, I went to AUC, the American University in Cairo, majored in one of the most useless majors ever, petroleum engineering. Petroleum engineering. All due respect, of course, to other petroleum engineers.
Yes, of course. I
haven't made much use of it.
I mean, I don't think any of us made use of any of our education, to be honest, at this point. Yeah. Yes. Cool. Sorry, continue.
Majored in petroleum engineering. Then my third year, my junior year, I applied to this very cool program at Google. It was an inside program basically where they select like 30 people from Middle East, Africa, and Europe. And luckily I got accepted. It was, I was, I think 19 actually.
Wow.
It was quite life-shaping, honestly. It was very brief, but very insightful to see that I'm a very, very competitive person, but to see like that my competition is not actually anyone around me, but I'm competing globally. There are people who are doing a lot more things around the world, who have done great things, and I need to be one of them, right? So I came back. I decided that I'm going to continue doing petroleum engineering, but I'm not going to work with it. I didn't find it dynamic enough. I didn't find it that it's quite fast and as I wanted, actually. I didn't want to be stuck in an oil field for 5-6 years before I do something like useful. So I decided to shift. And luckily back then there was this very cool company that we both also worked in Rocket Internet, and they were at this very strong trajectory back then, right before the IPO, where they used to hire these people, they call them GVDs, Global Venture Development Managers, which is pretty much the team that kind of manages different rocket ventures, scales them up, etc. So I was quite lucky. I got selected at Rocket. I was 20. Joined Rocket in the Philippines in their car classifieds venture. We was a second batch of GVDs at this venture. It was a very new venture. Worked was my first real leadership experience. So worked basically with a team to scale it up, grow it.
How old were you? How old were you when you joined Rocket? You were like 23, 24? 20.
20. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
So worked there for a bit, and we grew the company to 40 people. We scaled it. It became the second biggest car classified in the Philippines. Then Rocket went back to actually to continue college. Then I graduated, started at 22, and then joined Rocket again, actually. So they acquired this food delivery company in Egypt called Otlo, and joined Otlo basically to help in restructuring it, make it more efficient, integrated within the rest of Rocket. And then joined Kareem, where we met. Worked at Kareem. I was
it wasn't
for
easy.
A very short period, but was very important period in my life.
Yeah, I remember actually the first time I spoke to you, I was like trying to convince you about Kareem and how amazing it was, and come on, bro, and you can do this. Let's change the world.
I can relate to that experience as well.
Yeah.
Chris gave me that same talk.
Actually, on this call, it turns out I sold you both on Kareem.
Yeah.
But, I mean, let's not go there. But yeah, I think
we're very grateful.
I remember we're all very grateful, especially nowadays. But I think I remember the first time I heard about you. I think Mudassar came to me. He's like, man, there's this kid. His name is Mostafa Kandil. I spoke to him. You have to speak to him. Sell him, get him on board. I spoke to you like, yeah, man, sure. Yeah, of course, yeah. And I think you ended up going to Rocket or whatever the first time we spoke.
Yeah, I went to Rocket.
Yeah. So it didn't work. I guess I wasn't that good.
No, man, you're good. You're good.
But that was the first time we spoke, man. That was crazy. That was like
I did the wrong
2016,
choice. No? I was supposed to join Kareem in all honesty at that time. It was, but yeah, I was lucky enough to join again. Yeah. 1 year later, I think, since we first spoke, and it was quite life-shaping. In all honesty, I joined the expansion team, and that you led at some point as well.
Yeah.
And it was quite a great experience for me. We launched 8 cities. We launched Turkey. We launched 3 cities in Pakistan. We launched 4 cities in Egypt. So it was very different from Rocket. Rocket is a lot, as you know, about kind of like pushing to the edge, pushing everyone to the edge, trying to kind of get everyone to be super efficient on operation. But Kareem was like about taking a step back. How do we do things better? Very, very smart people kind of getting together to kind of solve real life problems. So it was quite a life-shaping experience with me. Then at 24, I quit Kareem and then started with it, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that day when we knew you were leaving. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thanks a lot. I hate to ask you this, but obviously you said one of the game-changing moments in your life was basically having to fend for yourself, right? And being raised by your mom, and and obviously I think moms and strong women raise the best children, to be honest. But how did that really change you? Do you think that it put you that kind of inherent pressure that you were by yourself and that nobody was going to give you a step up, no one was going to kind of lead the way for you, that you were going to have to make your own or clear your own path? Was that kind of the mindset that you've always kind of had?
So it was a bit, so I was lucky enough that I was born of a kind of a privileged family. So my dad used to be very influential in Egypt. Like the police force is very similar to the army, and he was quite influential in the police force. He was very young. And you being born into it, basically you feel that this is kind of the normal way of things, right? You don't know anything else. And out of nowhere, my dad passed away at 51, so he's still young. I was 12 basically. And he was very, very young. You still kind of don't know that there's actually anything different than what he's giving you in life, right? And then out of nowhere, everybody is like calling your dad every day. Everybody is around you. Overnight, they literally disappear, right? And you have no one except you and your family. And my mom was very young as well, and she was like super spoiled. Like we were super lucky to be in this family, and like my dad like really spoiled us in a way. So, and all of us are like on our own anymore, right? Like all of everything we had was gone overnight, pretty much. And then you see like your mom was like very, very dear to you. Was the person that everything you have in your life, and she's overnight has to go like defend for like everything for things you have, or like she has like to be like on ground pretty much. And you feel bad for her that this once like a princess who is now like has to do all of this. And I was quite lucky enough, and she was very, very smart that with every kind of tough thing that she faced, she came to me afterwards, like crying literally, and just saying, you know what, like everybody left us, nobody now like asks about us, nothing. And I'm telling you that when you grow up, you're going to be much bigger than your dad. You're going to be much better than your dad, that everyone who left us will come back just because of you. And this kind of like put fire in me, like constant fire in me, that I have to be much bigger, much better, and like this very competitive spirit that I have to win, you know.
That's crazy. I mean, hence building the fastest unicorn in the Middle East. I mean, you couldn't pick like a smaller objective, you know. The fastest fucking unicorn. Which best for unicorn? The fastest one. But it's amazing. It's odd, man. I never knew that about. I never knew that about you. I think we've known each other for such a long time, but I didn't know those details. And oddly, I think Steve knows this too. Oddly, you and me have pretty much the same story. I lost my father young too. He died when we were young, etc. My mom had to fend for us and take care of us and raise us as kids. Everyone left us. We were super privileged. So man, I'm super shocked by your story now, because it's like making me super emotional, because we're like exactly the same people. It's like I think the hustle in us and the grind and the motivation and the ambition and the fight comes from kind of not wanting to ever put our family or have to, taste that experience again. Like, that we don't want to be vulnerable. Right. So I think, man, that's shocking, man. I'm going to change topic, because if we get into this, it's going to get super emotional. I'm going to cry on my first podcast. But man, that's crazy. And I think that says a lot about who you are, man. So thanks for that. So at the end of the day, before even starting SWVL, so with all the experiences that you had and you tasted, Kareem, and you tasted, Rocket, and I read somewhere on your LinkedIn profile, obviously I checked it out before our call just to refresh my brain. You were like a teacher's assistant, you're quite academic, you did all kinds of like above and beyond things that the average kid would do. But what's the kind of mission besides building a unicorn? Is it very much in line with the culture and values that we all shared at Kareem? Is it about changing the world, the region? What's kind of like Mostafa's mission? When are you going to know that you made it?
So I think I'm quite lucky in a way that I don't feel I'll ever make it, like I always have this kind of spirit that whatever I have, whatever goals I set for myself, when I get to them, I get happy for the moment, and then I move on right away. Like I never kind of see myself kind of settling down or like saying that, okay, now I'm done. Now I'm there, like I always feel that we haven't scratched the surface. We haven't really done anything. We're so like, until now, like hundreds of thousands of people take SWVL every day, basically. And then to now, when I see someone that I don't know is taking SWVL actually, and they say, hey, you actually kind of work at SWVL, I get like super happy. Like the first time that someone used SWVL, like I get like a super ecstatic, about it. Yeah. So I never feel that I make it, right? And for me, the biggest kind of success is when actually people want to work at SWVL. When people see SWVL as such this great, cool, very big brand name that actually inspires kind of people to work at and inspires people to kind of quit their jobs and do things. And for me, it's of course transporting people, empowering these emerging market economies, building the backbone of these economies, and providing people with a safe, reliable convenient transportation, especially for women, actually, and what this means to economies is a great thing to achieve. But for me, the bigger purpose is actually inspiring people to build things, to quit their jobs, to pursue kind of innovating, to actually build things from scratch. And I think we're quite lucky that we've seen that happening in Egypt. And I think after SWVL started growing, I see a lot of my friends even started quitting their jobs and started doing things. And this is just the start of it. And you see the entire Middle East now is moving. I think what Southeast Asia has achieved in let's say the past 5 to 10 years, Middle East would achieve much, much sooner. So yeah, I think we never settle, and this is kind of the culture that we're building inside SWVL. One of our values is that if we're not getting to a new height every day, then we're dying. We're not doing much, right? We have to reach more people. We want to build a global brand name coming out of Middle East and Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for a long time, I grew up in the Middle East as well. And I really believe, I'm a guy who believes in brands. So I believe in the power of brands, right? And I think when you grow up in the Middle East, especially when we grew up in the Middle East, well, you're much younger than me, but I think irrespective, we didn't grow up to brands in the region that inspired us, right? If we were ambitious, we wanted to work for Rocket or Google or Facebook or Amazon or, pretty much for, any brand. If you were an engineer, an architect, a developer, you wanted to, making it meant leaving the region almost, right? It was like, I'll go to the Valley, or I'll go to, Germany, or I'll go, that was making it. Making it was not staying here, right? It was because there was nothing inspiring here, right? And for a long time, I think there was a huge void, and not for lack of fucking problems. We have so many things to fix, and what was super depressing about it was that we have amazing talents, right? It wasn't for lack of want or lack of, intent or lack of knowledge or capability. It was just nobody was inspired. Nobody believed in themselves. And I think Rocket was, also where I kind of woke up to. I was like, man, this foreign company, which is amazing. I think the basis of my career, everything I learned, the base of it came from Rocket.
Same here.
So the critical thinking, the problem solving, the pressure, the discipline, all that stuff came from Rocket for sure. But I think when I saw a foreign company come to the region and solve kind of our problems, I was like, man, this is crazy. Why aren't we doing it? Why can't we do it ourselves, right? And I think what you're talking about is basically that. It's, now that SWVL's made it, people see that, a 27-year-old Egyptian kid can build a unicorn, and an amazing unicorn, and a brand that inspires people. That so can I. And I think that domino effect is starting to happen, and we're seeing it now. I mean, the landscape versus when we first met to today is, I would never believe it, right? There's 100 VCs. There's a new startup every 4 days, 5 days. It's incredible. Yeah.
Man, and I think I don't want to. Kareem also has played a huge role.
Huge role.
In all honesty, I think Kareem's mission was, and Modesta's mission was, to inspire more people, to simplify people's lives, and to build this institution from the region that inspires. And in all honesty, man, without Kareem, we wouldn't have been inspired to quit. I remember in my first week, I went to Modesta. Fatma, my manager, set me up with him, so I was quite lucky to spend kind of an hour with him at that time. And I asked him, how did you, I didn't know that he was an entrepreneur before. So I asked him, how did you leave McKinsey, such a great company? You were pretty high up there. Why did you leave it? And he said, I believe that if I don't leave it, then this will be actually the biggest risk. And he was really right. He did inspire us, all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everything that Kareem did was a first, right? Building its own technology, building its own infrastructure, battling and figuring out regulation, attracting talent at this scale.
Yeah.
The brand that we built, it was one of the few brands that wasn't, tactical or functional. It was super emotional. It was the first for a lot of people. But I think, like you said, it proved that a local brand could go up against, the Goliath brands of the world, right? And actually succeed, man, and do it with a bit of attitude, right, to inspire people. So 100%, I agree with you. I think Kareem did lay the foundation, I think, for a lot of us, And I think now you're seeing it, I mean, you're the the best example of that fruit, kind of succeeding. On that note, and this being a show called Decade, I gotta ask you. I mean, Kareem is a competitor today.
Yeah.
It's like it couldn't be a more odd circumstance, right? So, you left Kareem and you started Swivel. I mean, at some point when you were at Kareem, you knew you wanted to leave and you wanted to start your own thing. I mean, that must have been a super, super difficult kind of pill to swallow. And I'm sure you don't want to kind of get into the details of the timing and when did you decide to do it and was it ethical or not ethical. And I don't care about that stuff, but generally, that must be a really tough thing for you to do because, like you said, we're brothers, we work together, we both left Kareem, so it's different circumstances. But I think, how did that happen, right? So, you knew that you would end up competing head on with Kareem if you got into mobility, right? So,
yeah.
So how did that happen? How did the idea come?
So man, like so when I was at Kareem, I spent a very little time at Kareem, and it was very, very kind of important for the last 3 years of my life. It was very little time though, and for me, the reason I quit Kareem there's nothing wrong with Kareem. It's just I always have this itch of building things. I get, like, for me, it's quite actually odd that I get my sense of existence, my sense of pleasure, my sense of accomplishment from doing things, from building things, from seeing things grow, And this is how I function as a human being. This is how I find happiness. So for me, happiness, there's no happiness. I find it in building things, And so for me, that before starting Swivel, that the time between Kareem and Swivel was actually, it was about what can I build, And for me, building, I believe that to build a great business, you have to solve a great problem as well, right? And me growing up in Ismailia and commuting to Cairo every week and then studying in Cairo and all of that, you see like how people struggle every day. I did the same struggle, right? Like I lived it to commute, to move around. And for me, Kareem was solving a problem, yes, huge problem, but for still a small niche in these countries, right? And in Egypt, starting with Egypt, right? And for me, it made sense that there must be another solution that can come into existence to solve for the middle class, right? That Kareem is actually not tapping into. And hence the timing was quite good because there was this Russian plane that Egypt is a very kind of touristic country, and you grow up in Cairo, you see like all of these buses going around, like touristic buses that's a very high quality. So my hypothesis was that these buses must be very underutilized right now. So then we had like two ideas at that time. One was to start a food delivery app because although I was working at Rocket, I think we didn't really do a good job, and still I think there's still a huge space for it in Egypt specifically, and someone can definitely do much better job than what's happening there. So I wanted to do either this or solve a big problem for commuters. And for me, the way I think about it is, if you look at it, if you split commuting in general into three parts, there's a short haul commute, there's a medium commute, and then there's a long commute. And Kareem and Uber and the likes were solving for the medium commute. There was anything less than, let's say, 10, 11 kilometers was very expensive because there's a minimum fare. Anything that's 20, 30 kilometers was also very expensive because it's just the time and because it's per minute and per kilometer, right? And then Uber, the Limes and Birds of the world came to solve for the very short commute, right? The scooters, the bikes, all of that came to solve for the 1 to 5 kilometers because they realized that. But there was really no one solving for the long haul commute. Like the biggest innovation that came to public transportation in the past 50 years was Wi-Fi in the bus, right? There was no really innovation coming to public transportation, and let alone emerging markets, right? That still doesn't have a functioning public transportation that's very core to their economies. So for us, it was more of a question, very similar to what M-Pesa did in Kenya, for example. Kenya kind of skipped the card, there was no, like, they went straight from cash to mobile money. For us, we wanted emerging markets to skip an era as well. It doesn't make sense for governments to build public transportation systems. If you look at Egypt, for example, the country spends like $200 million a year on just public bus, a service that it's not, you don't really do a great job doing, right? It's not, the private sector can do much better job doing it. And while they spend like $70 million a year only on R&D. So imagine if the 200 million just gets geared towards like R&D, you know, and other providers can come and build actually this infrastructure. So for us, it was, there must be a better way. Hence we started building SWVL. And for us, initially, like the unit economics didn't make sense. Operationally, this is super complex. On every end, it didn't really make sense. So yeah, and then we kicked off.
So, so basically, the motivation was to actually impact the real population, I mean, a bigger segment. So when you look at Cairo, when you look at Egypt in general, the majority of the population is unfortunately, you know, earning much less than the ability to afford a private Careem or Uber ride. So for you, the motivation was really changing the life of Egyptians at the beginning, right? So I mean, you're still super deep rooted in terms of where you come from and who you are. So for you, you're really solving problems that you might have seen and lived with, right? Etc. Now today, Careem has Careem Bus, and you're actually going up against, or actually, I think she just left, but you were going up against one of your friends, right? I think that's a super funny story. It's hilarious how this kind of goes full circle. But at some point, Careem was involved, was a partner, and now today is your competitor. I mean, that must be the most, I mean, and I know the respect you have for your ex-colleagues and for Modessa and stuff like that. But as an entrepreneur, I think there's a lesson there. It's right, you know, at the end of the day, if you think you can do something better and you believe in yourself enough, it doesn't matter, you know, I don't think it's a question of kind of your relationship to what's comfortable or uncomfortable. But if you think that there's a problem that's not being met, nothing should stop you. That's how I'm kind of reading what you're saying. Is that fair? Yeah, right? So,
very fair. And although we parted ways, we I think we're quite indebted to Careem, and I think they've played a great role in the shipping of SWVL. And we've like Modessa for me is someone that inspires me. That's someone that I see more of a father than figure actually than a colleague or at some point. So I have so much respect for them. And yes, the fact that we compete, I think everyone competes. Like it's healthy. It's healthy for the consumer in the end. And
it's so funny that you think of him as a father, because if you think about a typical Arabic father, he'll compete with you so bad that the typical Arab dad will like drill you down, and that's basically the relationship you have now, right, with Careem. Like, you'll compete head to head, right? So he's actually playing his Arab father role, right? So you know, I love kind of the experiences that we've all had on this call. I think we're all ex-Careem and we're all, you know, in ride hailing and stuff like that. But at this point, looking back, hindsight 2020, I have a very kind of mixed position on ride hailing in general, right? You know, some days I'm super proud. We changed people's lives. We probably ignited, like, or we were part of, you know, the ignition of a startup ecosystem and all that stuff. And we inspired people, and we still inspire people. But at some point, the industry to me is a big question mark. You know, where we're yet to see an industry or a brand really turn a profit. We're yet to see kind of a sustainable business model, and yet you're seeing. I mean, when you look at the people who've benefited from it, like the shareholder value, which is something I kind of talk a lot about these days. The shareholder value is amazing across the board, right? So if you look at people who've invested and went along the journey with Uber, with Careem, if we think about people like me, like Steve, like you, I mean, we've all, to some extent, really reaped lots of reward, either in experience or actual cash, right? But in terms of the businesses themselves being able to sustain and drive profits in the more traditional term of the word, none of these businesses have achieved that. So they've created immense wealth for shareholder value. But arguably, I mean, are they businesses? And it's a tough question because you're living it right now. But are these businesses sustainable? Right? Like, is this actually possible, or is there a reason that they're publicly managed because they're public service? Right? Is there? I'm having trouble making the math make sense. Right? And I think, you know, I'm curious to get kind of your position, and I think your business is a bit different. In terms of its you know, mass transit rather than individual transportation, that stuff. But how do you see the future of this industry?
Yes. So just to take a step back, actually, it's a very nascent industry, right? Like like ride hailing in general globally started 10 years ago, right? And there was so much to do, basically. There was so much to achieve, and there's so many problems to solve that it didn't make sense to chase profitability very early on. There was a lot to get before kind of you get to that. It's either you cannot do both at the same time. You cannot like become super profitable while growing like crazy. Like you need to pick, right? And at that time, this was kind of the right call. And you see now, like Uber, for example, last quarter, I think they turned around $750 million of adjusted EBITDA profit, actually, of the ride-hailing segment. So it already started getting profitable, and it will only get more and more profitable.
Sure.
In our space, actually, what we do, we use commercial vehicles, right? And these commercial vehicles have existed for years, has existed for tens of years. We're just making them a lot more efficient, right? And by making them more efficient, we're actually able to make money out of it, basically. So definitely, there are a lot of problems to solve. There are a lot of things. How do you build up a public transportation system on top of assets that you don't own in emerging markets that by nature are not the most reliable, right? How can you keep a promise even? How can you promise 10 people on the street that you're going to show up on time? If you show up 5 minutes late, it's a problem. If you show 5 minutes early, it's also a problem, right? It's a very, very tough problem to solve. And it's in cities like Cairo, and cities like Karachi, and cities like Lagos, like these very, very tough markets to work in. So I think very soon, like I have so much kind of belief in this space, in this sector, and I believe that it's going to be like such a profitable segment. And I think from the moment kind of they decided to become profitable, they've done quite a lot, and they've managed to improve quite significantly. And you see Careem, like I would imagine Careem would be profitable in the next 6 months if it was not for Corona, probably even sooner. So I have so much belief, and it's a way of life, right? Like it's not something that you can stop using, right? Like you cannot stop using Uber, Careem, Driven, like right? Like, you cannot go back to college. I was in San Francisco a few months back. I was in San Francisco a year and a half ago, and there was still taxis. I was back. I went back like a few months ago, and there was no yellow taxi anymore. Like you can barely see it. So it's becoming the normal way of life. It's the natural evolution, right? So these models are not going anywhere anytime soon, and they will become super profitable. In our space, it will even be, I think the bus space will be even a lot more profitable than ride hailing. We see like potential for great gross margins. We're proving the unit economics everywhere. So it's a great space to be in.
And how do you?
Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, you mentioned. I'll jump in. You mentioned on COVID. You know, how's that impacted you guys as of today, and how do you like perceive the industry coming out the back of it? You know, what's going to change for you?
That's a very tough question. So I'm like, honestly, it has an impact on everyone, right? It's we're in the business of moving people, and people are staying at home now, right? And we encourage them to stay at home. I think one thing that I think we've done right is that the first thing we've done, we said like, we are going to be here at your doorstep if you need us, but we encourage you to stay at home. We understand that not everyone has the privilege. We'd love also all of us to stay at home, but not everyone has the privilege to do that. But we encourage you to stay home, but we're always going to be there for you. So we're always going to be this reliable brand that you can depend on. And one thing that we've done, and I felt this is our duty, was actually to operate must-have routes, what we call must-have routes, which are routes across the city that we think are super vital at this stage, that we really cannot, that the city cannot live without. And maintain kind of the right measures in these vehicles, maintain only like a certain very limited number of people that can sit in every bus, maintain kind of being like having all the right kind of kits, health kits to have in these buses, to make sure that everything is up to kind of the needed safety measures. And we made all of these rides for free for everyone, because this is our duty this is kind of just a bit of a payback when we can to the economies that served us, right? So this was one, and two is we created we went with this initiative to what we call the frontline workers, like the medical teams who still have to go to work, right? Who without them we're nothing, right? And we give them we've urged them to request from us all the routes that you do want, all the buses that you want, and we always be at their service, transporting them from anywhere to anywhere. We've partnered with hospitals. We've made great partnerships with hospitals to be able to provide them these medical care teams with the right transportation they need, safe transportation that they need. We've also tried to do as much as we can to our captains as well. We've raised relief funds from our teams, from our investors to give it to them. We've partnered with FMCG companies to get ration packs to help them with Ramadan. We try to do as much as we can as a brand to be with our captains and our customers at this very tough times. So that's on COVID-19. I think after COVID-19, unfortunately, man, like in markets we're in, it will be very soon a question of whether you face, like, it's very sad to say this, like a certain death of starvation or an uncertain death of disease. And I'm so worried, man, that people actually will pick going to work over just staying at home because their families can't survive anymore, right? And we're quite privileged and quite lucky to be able to afford that, but a lot of people can't, right? And we're committed to do our best, but I think it will unfortunately have to open up sometime soon. We'll always be there. We'll always try to do as much as we can as a brand to keep people safe and to urge them to stay at home. But unfortunately, this is not sustainable.
Yeah. And as an organization internally, by the way, I'm assuming this sort of slowdown or downtime for you is an opportunity as well, kind of.
It's a great opportunity.
From a technology, a user experience, a development, features, etc. Is there a huge push now internally? Is that what you guys are really focusing on?
So internally for us, it's a great opportunity, right? Like whenever we couldn't ask for better opportunity, because we've always we're always growth junkies, right? And growth is like like you really once you taste it, you really cannot stop it.
And it destroys you. Not that I'm there. Anyway,
not advocating.
Not at all. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It brings,
so we've always luckily we started this a bit early, but for the longest time we've prioritized growth over efficiency. And this was the right time. The organization is still very, very young, right? So we needed to build a business first before making it efficient, right? So we prioritized efficiency over growth over efficiency. Now we have the time. We're not pursuing growth anymore. So we have the time to build for efficiency, to make everything more efficient. We've set 3 key objectives. One is how do we win back? How do we be there for our customers and captains in the time of need? And how do we win them back once everything is over? And 2 is how do we get super efficient? How do we solve for profitability and on every angle? How does every team from every perspective, whether in marketing, whether in operations, whether in product engineering, how can you solve for profitability? And 3, how can we keep a promise? How can we get better at keeping a promise? Building a public transportation system in emerging markets is something extremely tough, very operationally heavy. How can we streamline it, make it more efficient, and get better at our ability to give a promise to our captains and to our customers? So we've set those 3 objectives for our team, and we've been delivering on them quite aggressively, actually. So actually, I think we're far more occupied now than even when we go into office. We tried to go to the office for the longest time, me, myself, and like my leadership team. But they shut us off. Now we're about to kill ourselves staying at home.
Yeah, the staying
staying at home is killing us, man. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some benefits. I get to spend time with my daughter and my family. I get to have time with my daughter that I don't think I would have ever had. So I think that's amazing. I mean, we were traveling 10 days a month, and then we were working, like animals. And now I think being home, it's been forced to be a family man again, which is amazing. So there are some pros. Yes, probably this podcast, we would have never got to it. You live alone. Damn. Man, you can call me anytime. We can have a Zoom call anytime. that's what people are doing, you know. Like, oh, let's have a call. Let's see you on a house party. Let's see you on Zoom calls. I don't want to,
I
man.
downloaded
Like,
house party, man. I started doing things that I never imagined myself to do.
man, I
I'm
do
so
TikTok
worried I do
videos
TikTok.
now.
I'm so worried, man.
I'm doing TikTok. I'm doing TikTok. I'm doing TikTok.
I'm still trying
Steve.
to maintain my.
You have
you're
no
gonna
idea
have to
how long
fold.
I tried. You know, have no idea how long I tried to get me to convince Chris that we had to
No,
go on
man.
TikTok, and then he
You have
discovered
TikTok as well?
that. We woke up to like videos. He hadn't slept.
I lost my mind. Man. I
Man,
did
it's
like
such
3,
a
4.
great avenue. Actually, we wanna actually, even on a brand, actually start adapting.
It's
TikTok.
amazing.
It's such a viral kind of thing. I think it's part of our plans actually to start being TikTok friendly.
It's
amazing. It's so much fun. So much fun.
It's the creators platform. That's what's so cool about it. Forces creativity out of you. So just going back on with some of the things you were saying, you're talking about kind of the way the brand has pivoted during this time. And Chris, you and I have been we've been speaking to different brands out here in terms of the way that businesses could prioritize, and you're almost a good case study of that in terms of utilizing your workforce, utilizing your resources to kind of pivot and support during this time.
Yeah.
And then secondly, using the actual time to then think and become more efficient, or solve for more profitability. But actually all the stuff that's on the to-do list is actually starting to kind of be done, which is kind of which is amazing to see that there are that thoughts going in.
It's also a great time actually, so that we've done, like most of businesses, a lot of, like, globally everyone kind of froze hiring. Kind of is the first step that you do, but actually the only teams that we give exceptions for are the product and the engineering teams. We thought that this is a great time actually to double down on product, to double down on engineering, to make sure that our platform gets more and more. We build for customers, right? How can we define what do customers need and solve as many of their problems as possible during this downtime? So it's actually, we're now doubling down on engineering, on product, on data science, etc.
So almost
and those teams. Yeah. So that's exactly where I'm going. So you've just recently kind of moved offices, or you've kind of or are in the process of reestablishing your headquarters here in Dubai. Now there are probably a million reasons why, and I'll let you tell us, why you did that. But on a talent topic, so I think people really underestimate how difficult this is. One, attracting talent. Two, keeping talent. I think keeping talent is becoming really incredibly challenging. How are you navigating now? Obviously, COVID-19 is its own kind of challenge in terms of recruiting, speaking, onboarding, productivity, working, etc. But how do you guys manage that? And then just tell us why you have these kind of splits in locations and offices between Cairo and Dubai.
So man, we're an Egyptian brand, right? We started out of Egypt. We're super proud of this, and we'll always be an Egyptian brand, right? And we want to do our part basically to make Egypt actually proud, right? So this baby brand that started 2.5 years ago, that nobody kind of believed in, that nobody thought it's going to be of any use, that was going after Ubers and Kareems of the world actually, and who far more kind of have far more resources, have great teams that can execute and can make use of these resources. So we're always going to have this honor that we're an Egyptian brand, right? For us, as you mentioned, the retention of talent is something very, very tough, right? And now you're competing globally. You're competing with the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, right? And if you're not able to maintain your talent, there are 100 companies who are much better than you, or much more well capitalized than you, will take your talent. And every organization's most valuable resource is its people, right? And we believe our people are co-founders. So for us, the challenge was two things. One, how do we give people a great problem to solve, to keep them challenged? We hire very ambitious people who get bored super quickly. So if you're not keeping them engaged with the problem they're solving, we actually demand this from our people. If they don't get bored, then they're not the right people. So we try to hire people that we know are going to get bored super, super quickly. People who are ambitious, restless, who are on the run, and have this great energy. So one is giving them a huge problem to solve, and I think we're quite lucky that we're in space that we can. I don't want to. We're trying to build the gold standard for this space. That's what I'm saying. We're now the biggest in this space globally, and Uber was quite lucky to basically build the gold standard for ride hailing. They solved for so many problems that nobody was solving for. Things such as supply demand optimization with surge pricing. It's such a brilliant solution for buses for this category, which is very, very different from ride hailing. We're trying to be the gold standard. We're now the biggest in this space globally, and we want to build the gold standard when it comes to talent, when it comes to technology, when it comes to everything. So for us, it was a two-folded problem. One was on giving people like a great problem to solve, which I think the business model was already giving that to people. And two was actually giving them a great quality of life. And as we build a very international team, a very diverse team, people from everywhere globally join SWVL, it was very hard. It was starting to become a little bit harder to kind of bring them all in Egypt. So we needed to maintain Egypt, to grow it, to flourish it, but also we needed to have another place or another kind of office where we're able to, wherever Egypt is not suitable for, we can attract those people too. And we still maintain kind of like two headquarters in a way. Dubai being kind of like a central, kind of more central. There's a lot of proximity between the countries that we have right now and the target countries. And Egypt being kind of where all the operations go, where all of the engineering, where all of the R&D happens, etc., etc. And we're able to find great talent, and it's working very well with people.
Okay, amazing. And I think we've both been part of organizations, whether it's Careem or Rocket, where specific geographic locations had naturally better specialization, right? I think at Careem, for example, we even had a technology challenge, right? We had centers in Pakistan and Lahore. We had eventually we had an office in Berlin, and it was also about attracting talent, about cost of talent, et cetera, et cetera. So you see Dubai as what, like a servicing central for everything outside of technology. So marketing, I guess leadership, HR, admin, finance, etc. And then Egypt being the hub of the technology, of the building, of the development, etc. Is that how you kind of structured both hubs?
Yes, in a way. We're also now, we see great talent in Pakistan as well. So we're trying to do the same in Pakistan as well, build engineering centers, try to a lot of our teams are from Pakistan as well. So we've seen like very, very, very ambitious people coming out of there. So Egypt and Pakistan are the hubs where all the work goes basically. And
the brains.
Dubai is more of the project management kind of center basically.
Okay, and would it be fair to say that you might have started as an Egyptian company, but you are eyeing a global brand? Is that how you
want to be a global brand? Of course. I think we're trying to build a global brand with an Egyptian kind of birth.
DNA.
I would say.
Yeah.
DNA.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, I think that's one thing that I think that the region really hasn't been able to prove yet, right?
And I think we're quite lucky. Like we've launched in Kenya, which is very rarely you see like brands from the Middle East going towards Africa.
Yeah,
and we've done a great kind of job at Kenya. And we're becoming a household name. Like, people love us. We love the Kenyan people. We see a huge room in the rest of Africa to be able to kind of like, we have a huge product market fit in Africa. Middle East as well. Like we're part of the Middle East. We speak the language, and we have the teams we can definitely support. We even started to become a lot more ambitious. Even like we started seeing, we believe that we can build a global brand, not only limited to Middle East and Africa, but global brand. And we see that we're able to solve for the problem. We have the resources, we have the management capability to be able to build not a regional brand, not a local brand, but a global one.
I mean, that's super exciting, right? I think a lot of Middle Eastern brands tend to think regionally. I don't know what it is. I think they kind of box themselves into a territory that they understand or I guess are comfortable in. Now, what would you say to people starting businesses today in the Middle East? Is the opportunity should the opportunity be seen as strictly Middle Eastern, or should you start by having kind of your eye on markets like Kenya or countries in Africa or parts of Asia, et cetera, like you guys? Because I think as we come out of COVID, I think a lot of the kind of means to kind of figuring out how they can sustain any business is kind of expanding the opportunity a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And is that a recommendation? Do you think the Middle Eastern brands should be more bullish on terms of territory?
Man, I think Middle Eastern brands, like there's nothing lacking. There's no lack of resources or lack of talent, right? We just don't think big enough. I think that's to me, that's kind of the problem. I think I encourage everyone to think big enough, right? Like there's no like Flixbus in Germany is not better than us in Egypt, for example, to solve public transportation, to solve intercity transport. We're just not thinking big enough, right? Like we want to conquer the world now, and we encourage everyone around us to do. You see brands like Etopi, for example, doing in Europe, doing in the US, and they're doing an amazing job, man. And there's no really lack of talent or lack of resources, just a lack of ambition. And encourage everyone to be more ambitious. That's it.
So on that note, while we kind of wrap up, what makes you successful? What's the advice you give?
Man, I'm not successful yet. So.
Well, you're successful in the sense that I want to hear everything you have to say. So in my eyes, you're successful. But what do you tell kind of like an 18-year-old in Cairo or in Riyadh or in Jeddah? What do you tell these guys? How do you?
That's a very big responsibility. That usually kind of shy away from them and not kind of.
No, but okay, then what do you tell Mostafa? What do you tell Mostafa, 17 or 18-year-old Mostafa?
I think it's the ambition, man. I think that if I would kind of attribute anyone's success, not me, like anyone, it's two things: the discipline and the ambition. If you have and this is something I tell my team every day, that we decided the end result. We decided that we're going to be successful. Let's figure out how. But the decision is made. We're going to do anything regardless to be successful. Let's just figure out how we get there. But this is just a detail for us, right? I encourage everyone to do two things: to become super ambitious. That the world is your oyster, right? Like you have the brains, you have the power to execute, right? And you need to outwork everyone. Everyone's day needs to be two of yours or the other way around. I don't know. Like you need to work like your competition never sleeps, right? Like what Mark Cuban says, right? Like you need to work 24/7 for it. You need to have the discipline that you're gonna wake up at 6 a.m. every day, and you're gonna go to bed at 2 a.m. every day, and you're gonna do it for the rest of your life, and you're gonna put the effort to be successful and to execute on that. Because if you don't do it, guess what? Like someone else globally is doing that, and is gonna get there, right? So it's a matter of how much effort you want to put in this. How much belief do you believe? Do you have to execute on that? And it's all about ambition and discipline for me.
I think I couldn't agree with you more. I think when we look around us, I think the potential is endless, and I'm excited for kind of the region to kind of wake up a little bit, because I think that's what it needs. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your honesty. Thanks for kind of sharing your experience, and thanks for being our first guest. Really, really amazing. And hopefully we'll have you back here soon enough to celebrate your unicorn status and to see how we kind of see the future of SWVL internationally. Hopefully in Latin America, all over Africa, maybe in Europe, inshallah. But thanks a lot, Mostafa. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you on TikTok soon, inshallah. And
see you on house party.
On house party,
Now on house party.
but really appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time, man. And so that was the first episode. Thanks, Mostafa. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time on Duck It. And for all those who are listening, don't forget to duck and subscribe. I'm gonna censor myself a little bit, and don't forget to tune in for the next episode. Thanks a lot, Mostafa. Good luck.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm honored. Really appreciate it. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.